Hello, and welcome to the Third and King podcast on this fine April 5th evening. My name is Max. You remember my good friend TJ? I'd
Hey,
like to talk about the San Francisco Giants. TJ, how are you, pal?
I'm doing well. It's a good evening. We're halfway through the week. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Halfway through the week, it feels like we've got maybe some opening weekend jitters behind us. No
Definitely.
more weird built-in weather days.
Yeah, we're also in a stretch of, what is it, 9 straight day games to open the season, which is bizarre.
Yeah, so I like day games.
As do I.
But it does get hard working my day job to keep up with it. So I found myself in a Zoom meeting today, and I'm just looking like this because I've got a TV open. And I'm thinking, oh, I know they know what I'm doing.
It's definitely a struggle for those of us working day jobs, so I'll be excited when after the weekend series when they get back to some night games.
We've got our home opener coming up.
Yeah, on Friday against the Royals.
Yeah, and then I think immediately after that, we play the Dodgers.
Beat LA.
Why don't we got some injuries we could talk about, then maybe talk about what we've seen in these past two series.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we hope and expect to see coming up.
Yeah.
With you.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So I did. First off, I did notice that Luke Jackson was placed on the 60-day IL. Jackson's still working his way back from Tommy John surgery, right? So this just confirms he's not going to be ready for at least 2 months. We discussed this last episode, right? He was put only on the 15-day, and we kind of thought that was a little weird, but I think we expected to see this, right?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. We kind of expected him to be put on the 60-day injured list to make room on the 40-man roster. They didn't do it at the beginning of the season. I don't really know why, so we thought maybe it was hinting at something. Turns out we were right in the first place, and they ended up putting him on the 60-day IL because just like you said, he is recovering from Tommy John. So, he'll be back in June, I'd say. We were kind of hoping that maybe them not putting him on the 60-day injured list meant he was ahead of schedule, but no. I'm excited to see him when he's back.
I'm sure he feels the same way. You don't want to rush these kind of things.
Definitely.
But this does mean that we get Bryce Johnson.
Yeah, and putting Jackson on the 60-day, that opened up a 40-man spot for Bryce Johnson. So now he's back on the roster, and Brett Wisely was optioned from the 26-man roster in his place. There was kind of something that went under the radar a little bit as to why that happened in the first place. And apparently Susan Slusser of the Chronicle found out that because Johnson wasn't on the 40-man, the team had some other potential things they were considering, like a trade or something like that they were trying to get through before opening day. So they went with Brett Wisely, who was already on the 40-man roster on opening day, so that they had that flexibility in case they were able to make that move or that trade or whatever it is. We won't know what that is, but I think that just further explains why we didn't see Johnson on the opening day roster and why we're seeing him now.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of fans are pretty happy to have him here, right? We talked about how angry Twitter was.
Yeah.
Didn't make the opening day roster.
Yeah.
We did get to see his first big league home run.
We did. It's funny because he hit that left-handed, and I've been very critical of his ability to hit left-handed. Things like that, I'm happy to be proven wrong. If I say you can't hit left-handed, like go out and mash left-handed, and I will be happy to eat crow on that.
Oh, absolutely. But unfortunately, I think the whole thing may have been a bit overshadowed by the 6 other home runs that were hit that day.
Yeah, especially the 2 from VR, one of them being a grand slam. That's pretty big.
Incredible. You just said it. Brett Wisely was optioned down to Sacramento. I imagine that as a player, it's gotta that kind of news has really got to bum you out. But I mean, if playing time is what's most important, then it's the right move, right? He's going to get more at bats and he's going to get more exposure.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Some players, depending on where they're at in their career, are fine, having a couple days off, coming in off the bench, whether that's pinch hitting or getting a spot start. I think younger guys just fare better when they have consistent playing time. And then especially with Wisely, because I think he's going to get a lot of playing time in center field at Sacramento. And again, he's very new to that position. So it'll get him more comfortable in center field. He'll get consistent at bats. I think that's actually probably for the best for him in the long term. You're right, all things being equal, he probably wants to be on the big league roster. But this is probably pretty good for him if we're being truthful.
Yeah. One other injury we did learn about was Joey Bart with some back tightness. At first thought, I came to my own conclusion that this is why he hadn't been starting. I don't know if I necessarily believe that anymore now that I think about it. I think that this happened during batting practice on Friday maybe, and that Farhan came out and said some things, right? It sounded like they're just disappointed with him and he's failed to meet some expectations. So I don't know if the two are related, but I do hope that he rehabs well and gets back.
Yeah, and I think it just further complicates things with Gary Sanchez. It's possible that this injury almost gives them an excuse to option Bart back to AAA. And who's to say if that ends up being good for him long term or bad for him long term? We won't really know. But, considering he's going to be off the roster for at least 10 days on the injured list, they're probably going to want him to do a rehab assignment.
What I just said about Brett Wisely, right? Bart seems like one of those guys who might need the consistency, and he might need the exposure.
Yeah, he might go through the rehab assignment and then they just option him and keep him there because he's already in Sacramento, basically.
You mentioned Perez. What do you think of him so far?
He's looked incredible behind the plate.
Yeah.
His pitch framing is elite, at least to
He's
the eye test.
He's a gold glover. He's a gold glover.
Gold glove catching, I feel like because there's so many aspects of catching that it could be blocking, it could be throwing, it could be pitch framing. When we got him, he's a 2-time Gold Glove winner. I was excited, but I didn't really know what to expect. And man, his pitch framing is elite. Again, at least to the eye test. We don't have enough numbers yet to see if the stats match the eye test, but he seems to be stealing strikes all over the zone, and that's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, the Gold Glove Award's kind of goofy. But it at least does mean that at some point he was top of his class, right? Top of the...
Yeah. He's also looked better at the plate than I expected.
I think he's only batting like 200, which is about where I thought he'd be. Yeah, it's still super early, but I think we could boost those numbers up a bit.
Yeah, I guess he just reminds me a little bit of Austin Wynns more than Joey Bart. Like, it's not just a 3-pitch strikeout every time. He's making contact. He's drawing walks. He even had like a single he hit the other day that I think was 108 miles an hour off the bat. So that's really good exit velocity. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should rely on him to be a middle of the order force, but I still think it's been better than I expected because I expected him to be like just a full defense first, no bat whatsoever catcher, and it's looked a little bit better than I thought.
I can see us keeping him out there for a bit. While we're on the whole catcher trend, you got some thoughts on Sable?
I'm getting a little worried about Blake Sable just because he has 1 hit so far this season, and it's an infield hit. It was a bunt single. And unfortunately, he's not going to have a super long leash, and they don't have the luxury of optioning him or anything like that. I think he's got to start producing at the plate, or they might have to end that experiment, which would be unfortunate. I hope it works out. Again, another time where I hope I'm wrong, but I think he needs to turn it around quickly, or I'd be surprised if they keep going with it.
Do you think with Bart going on the IL and then possibly rehabbing that there's room for Sable to stay up a little longer?
Yes, absolutely. Depending on how Gary Sanchez looks, how long Bart's recovery timeline looks, you're right. It's very possible that has bought Sable some extra time, and hopefully that's all he needs and can start getting hot. I still don't think that they want him behind the plate very often. There's like a few players that if they come back, all of a sudden I'm worried about his roster spot. So it's either Bart or Sanchez, but then it's also Haniger and Slater whenever they're ready to come back, because Sable's been playing almost exclusively in left field, except for, I think it was one start behind the plate.
Right. So let's go there real quick. Slater and Haniger. I've tried finding news on them. I don't know what's going on. When is Slater coming back?
Yeah, there hasn't been any word yet on when either of them are coming back. They're progressing slowly is kind of the last word that I got. I also heard that Slater was closer than Haniger, which was kind of surprising because when they were both injured, basically Haniger said it was a very, very mild oblique strain, and then Slater got shut down with an elbow and then a hamstring strain, but the hamstring strain happened way after Haniger's injury. So to hear Slater is ahead of Haniger is kind of concerning for both, because I don't think either of them are going to be back in the next week or two. Again, hopefully I'm wrong. Maybe that's the theme of this podcast. Let's hope Teej is wrong. But yeah, I don't think we're going to see them anytime soon.
Okay, so when I think of Mitch Haniger, I also kind of tend to think of Michael Conforto. I'd like to know your opinion on his performance so far.
The stats don't look great, and one of the reasons I wanted to talk about him, I actually thought about talking about him. I swear it was about 5 minutes before he hit his home run on Monday. Other than the home run, the stats don't look great, but I think his swing
Think of him more often.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I'll be his catalyst. I think his swing decisions look good. I think his swing looks good. So those type of things together, I think he's run into a little bit of bad luck. Him in particular, I feel like he's gotten the bat taken out of his hands a couple times by some borderline at best calls. And yeah, so basically what I'm trying to say is I think sooner rather than later, the numbers are going to start matching what we're seeing at the plate, because I think his at-bats look pretty good.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. If you could do us that favor, talk a little more about him. Think about him.
I'll think about him a little more. Sure.
We'd all appreciate that. That's the last bit of news that I had on my notes, except for one thing I do have circled to allow you to toot your own horn. So why don't you go ahead and do that for us all?
All right. Yeah. So I've been saying for weeks at least that they were going to piggyback some starters. I specifically said they were going to piggyback Tony Disco, Anthony DeSclafani, and Sean Manaea.
For those newer listening, I think this goes back to episode 2, right?
Yeah.
Predicting the rotation.
Yeah, it just seemed to make the most sense because they have at least 6 starters. You can argue 7 or 8, depending on what you think of Sean Jelly and Jacob Junis. And that's only the pitchers that are on the 26-man roster, so it's not even counting the guys at the minor league level as depth. So they were either going to go with a 6-man rotation or they were going to delegate some of their starters to the bullpen, but I didn't think they were just going to turn them into 1-inning guys either. So I think the plan the whole time was to have them piggyback or like tag team start, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And DeSclafani and Manaea just made a lot of sense. So I've been saying that for a while, and then sure enough, they did that. And it's funny because DeSclafani went out there and shoved. Like, he looked fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
He looked like the 2021 version of himself. And I think that kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit because that's the game where they hit 7 home runs. But he looked incredible. He looked really good.
He really did.
The plan was they were going to have him go 4 to 5 innings, and then Manaea was going to come in the 5th or 6th. But because he was pitching so well and pitching so efficiently, he got through 6 on like 75 pitches. So Manaea didn't even come in until the 7th. Manaea only got the 7th and the 8th. It wouldn't shock me if the next time that rotation spot comes up, that they swap them, that Manaea is the one starting and then DeSclafani is the one that comes in out of the bullpen to kind of tag team off of that. But we'll have to see.
You're right. Disco was dealing. He was vibing. He was showing his passion out there, almost starting fights.
That was weird.
I don't know if we'll ever know the truth about that or get to the bottom of it, but I think it's really a non-story. But it was fun to watch.
DeSclafani threw a 3-0 slider to Andrew Vaughn. Andrew Vaughn hit a 40-foot comebacker and was mad. and dropped an F-bomb. And I think he was mad at himself. Again, to your point, I don't think we'll ever know. But I think he was like, shucks, running down the line. And DeSclafani thought he was yelling at him. So he took offense to it. But I think it's a complete non-story. They haven't even brought it up since. So,
But think about that. Let's say that Vaughn is mad that Disco threw him a 3-0 slider. What's he want him to throw? Because if we look at what the Giants are doing, they're swinging a lot on 3-0 counts.
yeah, so I think Andrew Vaughn wasn't mad at the pitch, though that's kind of the word that's been going around, is that he was mad that he got a 3-0 slider. I don't think so, because the days of just grooving a 3-0 fastball are long gone. So I think Vaughn was mad at himself for either swinging at the slider in general, like misrecognizing it as a fastball and swinging at a slider, or just putting a poor swing on the slider. Because you're right, these days a 3-out count's going to be the best pitch you're going to see in the whole at bat. So you sit one location, you sit one pitch, and if you don't get it and it's a called strike, you're still at a 3-1 count. But if you do get the pitch you're looking for, swing out of your shoes for it. Why not?
That's not quite what we were taught in Little League.
No.
But you're right.
Yeah, it is kind of a newer thought process, a newer convention to not take automatic 3-0. But when you think about when you're going to get the best pitch to hit, it's probably going to be 3-0.
Opening series for us is come and gone. Minor leagues right now are just getting into it. Triple A's already started. Double A and both A's are still to come this weekend.
Yeah.
What do you think about the guys we've got gearing up in the minors right now? Kyle Harrison's going to be in Triple A, right?
Yeah. So it was funny because the whole offseason we were hearing about how much they thought of Kyle Harrison and that if he pitches well, we'll see him very early in the season. And I don't disagree with that. But then the last I heard before the assignments went out was that he was going to start in Double A, which didn't really add up. And then sure enough, he was assigned to Triple A. He actually made his debut yesterday for the River Cats. He only threw 2 innings. I think they're going to go real slow with him, bring him on slowly. They'll have him on an innings limit for sure, and they want to be real careful with him because he's still only 21 years old. In those 2 innings, he struck out 4 and allowed only 1 hit. Both fantastic. He also walked 4, which is less good. And I think that's kind of the thing that's going to hold him back right now is his command and control. I think once he gets that ironed out, that we'll probably see him in the bigs.
I think it's great. He's at AAA, keeping him close to San Francisco. I think that's promising. You just talked about the walks. To be fair, though, who's one of those guys he was walking?
He did walk Fernando Tatis Jr. twice. You're right.
Okay. All right.
I'd be scared to pitch to him, too.
I would walk him. Von Brown, Luciano, I think Matos and Patrick Bailey, are they all in Double A? I think they're all in Richmond.
Yeah, they're all going to be assigned to Double A. Von Brown and Luciano both had some injuries over the offseason or in spring training, so they're going to start in extended spring and then get assigned. But yeah, both of them are going to join Double A with Matos and Patrick Bailey.
Yeah, so all 4 of those guys, super exciting.
Yeah.
I'm also very excited for Von Brown to see what he can do. I got to see him when he was in Eugene, when they would come up here and play the Hops. I got to see him, and he's an exciting guy to watch.
Yeah, I'm a little curious to see what they do because both Von Brown and Matos are really good defensive center fielders. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see what they do and how they end up working that out. But yeah,
totally. And then other than that, who we got down in Eugene now? We've got Averson Ortega and Grant McCrae.
Yeah, so Grant McCrae was at San Jose all of last year and almost had like a Von Brown type season where really good defensive center fielder. In fact, I think McCrae is probably the best defensive center fielder they have in the system right now. And then stole a ton of bases and showed some power. So some really nice tools there. Speed, power, good defense, that kind of thing. A lot of swing and miss right now in McCrae's game. So that's one thing that he'll have to improve on as he moves up the ladder. But he's really exciting. One guy that doesn't really get mentioned with the rest of the prospects is Averson Arteaga. Averson Arteaga, I think, is really interesting because he's a really natural shortstop. So everybody thinks he's going to stick at the position. The jury's still out if Luciano is going to stay at shortstop, but Arteaga, by all accounts, is a really good defensive shortstop. So I'll be interested to see how he progresses in high A and kind of where that goes. Because if he really can stick at the position, we might see him at shortstop in a couple of years, as opposed to us thinking that Luciano was going to be there.
I feel like we have a lot of shortstops in the system right now.
That's a good problem to have, because
Yeah.
if you've got a lot of shortstops,
Athletic position, yeah.
you're probably athletic. That means you can probably play second base. It probably means you can play third base. In some instances, it means you can play center field. You know, the Astros a few years ago had Carlos Correa, and then Alex Bregman was coming through the system as a shortstop. Then they just said, okay, go play. I think they even brought him up and planted him in left field because he was just hitting so much that they wanted his bat in the lineup. And when you're an athletic shortstop, you can kind of do that and fake it at least a little bit and get away with it. And then an opening was made at third. He took over at third, and that's where he's at now. And he's a very good third baseman. Obviously, the bat's really good. So, yeah, I mean, having too many shortstops. I mean, look at the Padres. They've got, 4 shortstops, but it's a good problem to have. So, absolutely.
All right, look, that felt like a ton of news. Looking back on the last 2 series, notice any trends, anything worth chatting about?
Yeah, I think there were a few things. Brandon Crawford had that huge day in New York on Saturday, so the second game of the season. He hit that huge long home run, stole a base.
I'd even say he pimped it. That was a Brandon Crawford pimp.
Yeah, I think that was the hardest hit ball, at least that he hit between last year and this year, but I think it might have even been the hardest hit ball of any Giant over the last 2 years, like even over some of Jock's
He
balls.
mashed it. He knew it. He dropped that bat. That was a fun watch. And yeah, I think you're about to say it. He even stole a bag.
Yeah, he stole a bag, and then he also had a really good defensive play to end the game. He started that double play on a rocket that Stanton hit. Stanton
billion mile an hour.
Yeah. And Crawford wrestled it and started the double play. So that was good. It was one game. I'm not expecting him to be back to his 2021 form where he was borderline MVP candidate. But if he's somewhere between that and where he was last year, I think the Giants would take that, and I think we would too.
Oh, yeah. The stolen bag, though, I will tell you, in MLB The Show, he is a 27 speed. I was jumping for joy when I saw that.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Stripling? His outing wasn't the best.
It wasn't the best. After the game, he was talking to reporters and kind of wore it, which I don't think it really means anything, but I think as fans, we like to see that. He's like, yeah, I missed on a couple sliders to 2 guys you can't miss with sliders to. Stanton hit that ball 485 feet, so yeah, you can't miss to that guy. And, that's one of those things where, yeah, I think we like to hear it. We would also like to see him come out next time and do better. He would say the same thing, right? Like, he missed on a couple pitches. Sometimes you get away with those misses, and sometimes Stanton hits it 500 feet. What are you going to do?
Because you said he wore it, I noticed that he's wearing Pablo Sandoval's number.
Mm.
And I couldn't help but thinking I would rather see Pablo pitching. Let Pablo pitch.
At least for the comedic value, because there wasn't much funny about Stripling's start. I think you're right.
No. We got through it, though. What about Yaz? How you feeling about Yaz?
Yaz looks great. Kind of like what we were talking about with Conforto. He's making really good swing decisions right now. And then on top of that, he's making really good contact right now. Obviously we're only 5 games in. He actually had a 986 OPS in May last year. I think everyone would say that Yaz had a disappointing 2022. So I think we have to be a little bit careful. It's early. We're only a few games in, but yeah, I think I think he's looked really good so far, and we just hope that he can keep that up. He also made a couple really good throws in the game today. He threw out somebody at the plate. He made another throw that kept somebody from advancing. So, I mean, Yaz is a good player, and if he can hit like he did a couple years ago, then I think he's an even better player.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's a new dad, right? So maybe he's just got a little extra spark.
Maybe. Or maybe he's finally getting some sleep. I don't know.
No, because, I am a dad, and I am just tired. We got a lot of baseball coming up ahead of us. I think we've got like 6 games in a row, 7 games. Looking at our schedule right now, we've got.
I think Thursday is the next day off. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of games coming up. We've got one more in Chicago. We're gonna see Lance Lynn. How do you feel about Lance Lynn?
The antics are whatever. I don't know. I think he's a good pitcher. He's one of those guys that like kind of was a late bloomer. Didn't really come into the league until he was a little bit older, but he's been extremely consistent and pretty good since he came in.
I think I would love it if he was on the Giants, like the antics, but because he's not, I'm like, okay, guy, back it up.
Tone it down a little.
Are we seeing Wood tomorrow? We are, right?
Yeah, it's the first time we're going to see Alex Wood in the regular season.
I like Woody. If anyone is prepared for a pitch clock, it's Woody.
Oh, yeah. He's just going to come out firing. Absolutely. And then we'll probably see Junis, like, I don't know, we'll see Wood for 2 times through the order, and then we'll probably see Junis to kind of tag team off of him.
And then immediately after tomorrow's game, we're going home for our home opener.
Home opener, Alex Cobb is going to pitch the home opener. We don't know who's pitching for the Royals, and we don't have the probables for the Giants the rest of the series, but we at least know that Cobb is going to pitch on Friday.
And then, the Dodgers come to town.
Yep.
What should we expect from the Dodgers?
Well, they've got Trace Thompson and Jason Hayward hitting home runs like it's 2015 or something. I don't know.
I saw that crazy stat for Trace Thompson, right? All 3 of his home runs in that one game were the same exit velocity.
Really? I didn't see that.
Oh, the same exact to the decimal.
Wow.
Yeah. Look it up after this. First off, feels like a glitch in the system.
Definitely.
But I read that and was like, I'm more blown away by the fact that Trace Thompson hit 3.
Yeah. I think 2 of them were against Bumgarner. I don't know. I'm hopefully we.
Bum didn't take that one. We didn't take that one.
No. And Trace Thompson's always hit lefties well. He's kind of a lefty masher, always has been. So it's not, I guess I'm not shocked. But there was a time when Bumgarner was on that, he would throw that cutter so into right-handed hitters that, he'd basically take their thumbs off if they swung. Not anymore.
Not anymore. So we lost the season opener to the Yankees. We won Saturday's game.
Yep.
So we ended up taking, and it felt disappointing, right? Because then Sunday came around and Sunday wasn't a good game. But I had time to reflect, and honestly, taking 1 of 3 from New York in New York, that's good. I'm happy with that. I think anybody should be happy with that.
Yeah, and then they've split the 2 games in Chicago. If they can take the game tomorrow,
would be great.
Then they go home and they're 3-3, and then they play a Royals team at home, and hopefully they can win at least 2 of those games, and then all of a sudden we're a couple games above 500. If they lose tomorrow and they go back home 2-4, even though that's only 1 game difference, it kind of feels a lot different. So hopefully they can win tomorrow, be happy on the flight, and then go home and play well against the Royals.
Yeah, and then roll that into that Dodgers series, and let's take 2 of 3.
Yeah, I'd love that.
It'd be great.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm excited to have it back. I'm looking at the schedule. I've 7 straight more days of baseball.
Yep.
It's gonna be great.
Yeah. I think one other thing to talk about is that Tyro Estrada got the day off today. So he fouled a ball off his calf on Monday, and they took him out of the game. And then when they released the lineup today, he was originally in it. And then they opted to go with JD Davis at third and move VR from third to second. I think that's just A, precautionary, but then B, it was just a good excuse to get JD Davis in the lineup. Like, him and Wilmer have had very few plate appearances so far, which is partly a good sign. They have so much depth. They have a lot of players that they need to get into games and things like that. So I think this was kind of just an excuse to get JD Davis some at-bats and have Tyro get a rest day and feel good for tomorrow. I don't think there's anything to be worried about.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It did look like he tried to force them to allow him to stay in that game, right? And then they made the decision to pull him. I'm sure a little bit of that was going on where he was saying he's good, and I think you're right. It's precautionary.
Yeah.
It's a long season. He's been playing a lot.
Yeah. Like, he's going to get some rest days throughout the season anyways. Why not get a rest day when you hit a rocket off your calf,
Yeah, no thanks. But that's all I have. Is there anything else you want to throw in here?
If we want to talk about Matt Beatty for just a hot second, which is all the Giants have talked about him too, because he has one at bat this whole season.
Yeah, let's do it. He has an option left, right?
Yeah, so when we talked last, it was opening day, and they had just made that trade for him, and we were kind of perplexed on what the reasoning was. It felt like it was just going to be a very short-term thing because it didn't seem like they had room on the roster when Slater and Haniger were back. Turns out he has an option left, so that's kind of the reason why they did that, is he's a bench bat for now when people are healthy. If no one else gets hurt, knock on wood, that, he does have that option left where they can park him in Sacramento. It's a little weird, though, that they traded for him and he has one at bat. Kind of goes back to what we were saying about they are trying to, force some at bats for JD Davis and Wilmer Flores. Like, they have a lot of at bats to go around, but it's still a little odd that he has one pitch hit appearance and that's it.
Yeah, very odd. All right, friends, that's it. That's all. Thank you for joining us again. Hey, if you liked anything you heard or if you didn't like anything you heard, go ahead and send us a message. You could do so at thirdandkingshop@gmail.com. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this at. If that's YouTube or any of the streaming services out there, go ahead and give us a subscribe. Visit us at thirdandking.shop. We've got some sweet merch and some other swag you can check out. Yeah, there you go. TJ's got this sweet shirt on. 4 legends right there. And if anything, visit us on the social medias at Third and King Shop. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Adios.
See ya.